Hey everyone, welcome to another Teach Kevin Your Thing session. In today's session, we are going to be learning how to build Next.js apps with a visual headless CMS. I have Steve from Builder. How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, thank you for coming to the show. Big fan of everything you guys are doing at Builder. And I think I've had like two other folks from Builder come to the show, but not about Next or Builder itself, which we're going to talk about in this session, more of Quick, which is the your very new latest open source framework. So before we get into everything you do, let's introduce Steve. So can you tell us who you are, what you do, what you've been doing, just a little bit of backstory to you before we get started.
Totally. Yeah, maybe I'll start at my most recent job. I worked in leading a team of front end engineers. I led the web engineering team at a company called ShopStyle. So they're an e-commerce company doing like $500 million in GMV, which means like purchases going through the website. And we actually, all the way in like 2014, we were live in what they call headless commerce now. So in production, we had an AngularJS front end website and we had a Java backend. So we ripped all the old website into being a pure backend API and then single page progressive web app front end. That was super cool, but we hit kind of two issues. Issue one was AngularJS was not performant for like a large scale e-commerce use case. And in e-commerce, the first page load matters a lot. So once you downloaded all the JavaScript, it was pretty snappy to navigate through pages and stuff like that. PWA, a single page app, can be very snappy in those transitions. But that first page load was really bad. And in e-commerce, when you need to show somebody like an ad or they see you on social media and they just want to tap to see you, let me browse the products, see if I'm interested, they have very little patience. And so that was an interesting learning of this technology is cool, but there's some problems to solve on that page speed. And then we had an even more pressing problem in that business, which was an e-commerce website is heavily marketing driven. So you have a whole team of people that need to do stuff on the website. They need new pages all the time for these campaigns, these ads, these email blasts, whatever. They need to be unique looking because, a special product launch needs its own flashy page that looks like no other page on the website. They need to run variations of pages. So similar to when you go to Amazon.com, if you usually shop a certain type of product, let's say the simplest level, you shop menswear, you shouldn't come to the homepage and see 90% women's wear. You should see stuff that reflects the stuff that you shop. So a lot of apparel sites can at least split their shoppers in two groups. If they've seen you before, you're either shopping menswear or women's wear in the vast majority of cases. So if we know you shop menswear, let's show you menswear. If we know you shop women's, let's show you women's. And then lastly, they had to run A/B tests all the time too. So again, let's try this different copy. Let's try these different buttons, these different layouts. And in e-commerce, some of this they call merchandising. So you have to show you experiment with what products you put on what pages and what kind of promotional units you do too. So maybe you don't have a specific product on a page. You have like a nice image that says, shop the new fall coats collection, whatever. Anyway, infinite stuff this team had to do. And we had a team of engineers who were just building all these things. It was driving us crazy. It's not very fun work to do. And eventually, the marketing team came to me and they used a drag and drop system. I think it was Webflow, so more of like a drag and drop site builder. And they made something that'd been asking us forever because we had long backlogs. And so they could be asking us for the same thing for weeks before we could get to it. And they made some page they'd been asking for in Webflow. And they're like, hey, engineers, we did this thing that you've been asking us for. Can you please just kind of copy paste it onto the Angular website? Like it's here, just get it there. And we had to explain like that's not really how this works. You don't like copy paste or whatever. But that kind of led to the realization behind Builder, which is we had a headless CMS. It could manage basic structured data. But most of what people do in e-commerce and marketing sites and stuff like that is they're making significant changes, whole layouts. They have designs in Figma they need to get in here, and they need to not go through developers if at all avoidable, because sometimes these designs are for a page that lives for one day. The one day Memorial Day sale page, and then it's gone. So
Yeah,
it ideally isn't in your code base in the first place. And that's kind of where we are now. I left there to start Builder, and we'll talk about that, but I hope that's some helpful context.
yeah, that's amazing context, and it so mostly. I've always seen there's a little bit of divide for, like these days with maybe like SaaS application, you'd notice you see like example.com and then the real app will be like app.example.com. And the example.com will build with something like maybe like Webflow because the the builders they want to get speed, like maybe like the marketing folks are going to be the one to handle that example.com while the dev do that bit. But I think I'm seeing builder as a sort of like bridging that gap where you could have like a visual CMS which your marketing team with no code or low code experience can work on while you still not sacrifice the whole code that you'd like. You can just dive into your code and still do the same thing, right?
Exactly. That's spot on. In most cases, what we see is people have an existing website. It's full of code because they need to control, like, take like a jcrew.com or nike.com or whatever, apple.com.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're not going to switch to something like Webflow. They just can't. They have to be on a certain infrastructure. They use certain front end frameworks. They have developers building all kinds of bespoke components, these really beautiful micro interactions. That's not going to go away by any means, but they need people to still come in and produce things visually. Everybody wants speed of the website. Website's got to load fast. They want speed of iteration. So they don't want it to take a month to build a page with
Yeah.
engineering time, which is expensive. And engineers, to a marketing department, they see engineers as people who like to complain a lot because they don't like to build this stuff. Just kind of transcribing designs is not fun.
Yeah.
And then people want control. They don't want to say, oh, we're on this no code tool and this no code tool doesn't support React components or the quick framework or whatever. Like, no, you
Yeah.
want all of it. And that's kind of the bridge we gap.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a really good gap because I know I don't like CMSs because of the soul that I can never have access to the code. Like customizing stuff is like a pain, especially from a developer standpoint. Maybe like a marketing person would be like, "Yeah, I'm used to all this. I can always just go click." Especially with the days of, I think WordPress is still in the game, and that feel is always good where you could just go to your admin dashboard and you just click, drag buttons, put everything there. I'm not really I don't really like it that much because I like seeing code. But in terms of moving quickly, I see the value there for like giving a visual headless CMS. So um we've been saying visual headless CMS. And what is the difference between okay, let me just flip it. Is there a visual headful CMS?
That's a good question. So,
Yeah.
yeah, let me explain where that term comes from,
Yeah.
and it's kind of funny. So, in the original days or the earlier days of the internet, we had just CMS, right?
Yeah.
A system to manage content that didn't require, just
Yeah.
hand coding everything on a website. And content, obviously, we differentiate from maybe functionality. Content is like blog posts, landing pages.
Yeah.
Could be data like authors
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. But it's not like when Web 2.0 started becoming more of a thing, and we had like Facebook. We don't call the information of the Facebook, all the interactive data they have like content. Content's more static stuff, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, we had content management systems. WordPress became the huge player there. Easy way to just produce pages. You had sort of like a WYSIWYG kind of
Mm-hmm.
HTML rich text editor. Awesome. And over time, when things like one of the biggest kind of pulls here was when the native sort of the iPhone came out, we had all these different native mobile devices that start to matter a lot, and people needed specific support for native mobile apps or faster mobile websites. And now your WordPress site, that's like basically the back end for managing the content and how it's stored, and the front end for serving the content was all one PHP code base. But PHP
Yeah.
wasn't the best for a fast mobile site. It's definitely not what you're going to use in a native app, in the iOS or Android app stores. And so you started to need to decouple these things and say, okay, we had a monolithic CMS. Now we need a headless CMS, something that's pure backend, input the data, and just make it available over JSON APIs.
Mm.
And then we can have our iOS app, our Android app, our, now not just, flexibility of platforms, but flexibility of frameworks. So Next.js website, quick website, whatever, all connected. You can have a
Mm.
watch, an Apple TV, whatever. Awesome. And so that was really, really cool. And you got this new flexibility, both at the point of, flexibility to choose your own technology even just down to the language and not down to the platform support. Um, but also you got quite a bit more ability to customize the CMS with integrations. Like WordPress always had a plugin system, that's true, but the way headless CMS works is really you could think of it just as like a Postgres database. You've got schemas, and any integration can read and write to those schemas essentially, view, modify, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just have a UI layer for editing those schemas. So you just get these forms, and the forms are just like, here's the fields. This is a string field, number field, whatever. Fill it out, publish, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
The problem, as you might imagine, with that is most websites, especially take an e-commerce website or a marketing site or whatever, they don't get broken down into Postgres tables very cleanly. Meaning, your marketer or marketing team is not thinking in terms of structures, schemas, page layouts, enumeratable fields. They're just like, I have this Figma design. I just the changes in the design need to go on the website,
Yes.
and like I don't know where these things are or how they're structured, and
Yep.
and like what. Okay, so this part's in the CMS, but that part's in your code base. So we can edit this, but not that. And like, what if we want to just rearrange? Oh no, the fields aren't set up that way. It
Mm.
becomes a total nightmare. And
Yeah.
so Builder tries to look at it back from the point of view of the user again and say like, hey, I love data, and we offer structured data support just like any other headless CMS. So that's why we're still a headless CMS. We're built in the same foundation. But we're just like, hey, there's a structure of data that's missing here, which is sort of a form interface, like a Google form, is not the right editing interface for the web or native apps. There's actually two specific interfaces that are way better. One is, think of if you're writing long form content, you want something way more like Notion. You
Yeah.
want just a pad. You want it to have a real-time preview. You want to do slash commands to add, image and stuff, and bonus points if that is able to pull from your components. So we're not back in the WordPress days where we provide, this big inner HTML string that you render, but rather all these things are made up of a set of built-in components that you can customize if you want to change how accessibility is handled or SEO or whatever. And then you can add your own components. So imagine if you had your own Notion, but when you hit a slash command, all the blocks you can add on, the embed, a tweet, and whatever, those are just your code base. You can install shadcn and have your own or whatever. But then if you think about, like, that's great for long form content, like I said, blogging, content heavy pages, that's awesome. And that's pretty much more ideal interface than a big old form. On the other side, when it comes to things like landing pages or much more visually rich pages, ideally you just want to feel like Figma. Everybody knows how to use Figma. Everybody can just drag and drop and especially pull from your templates and other kind of components you have in Figma and produce designs. And that's where headless CMS is really kind of run short. Like a form interface over a database does not give you the user experience that people are looking for to create these incredible things. And if you look at other industries like the gaming industry, you'll actually see that their visual tools are way beyond the web. Like, it's
Yeah.
insane. Like, if you use Unreal Engine 5, you can like go into these like environments where you can be building out visually the 3D worlds people go into, take the assets directly from the code base. These are like C++ objects. You're dragging and dropping. You're kind of going in and looking throughout the world, and you're making it perfect. And like, if you look at a AAA game and you imagine a world where people are trying to code up AAA games, like people code up CSS, like you're line by line saying,
Mm-hmm.
oh, the color is RGBA, this, and the distance, the pixels, the gap, the margin left is this. That would be insane. It's just too much.
Yeah.
And what's ironic is they have way surpassed us because arguably the expectation on games has become so high in terms of the extreme degree of detail. And the web we've just kind of left lacking. But what we found is if you take the structure of a headless CMS, integrate anywhere, customize everything, all API delivery, but you give the ability to add unique interfaces, a Notion style interface or a Figma style interface, where people who are not developers can come in and painstakingly make perfect. And at the end of the day, you're just delivering it dynamically. When you hit publish, you're just getting perfectly fast, quick Next.js or whatever code over the wire, just like if a developer had written it. Then you solve a lot of problems, and you have a lot of the benefits of the old CMS world without the drawbacks, which is kind of the idea. So it's a visual headless CMS that's got nice visual editing capabilities.
Yeah. I think that's awesome because of the gap you just bridged. Because with CMSs, it's a little bit rigid. You use the form you're given. If you want to go down, you have to. You're also going to have to use the form, because I do know those days. if you want to like add like CSS to like WordPress, they'll give you like this additional CSS bits which you just put in there and hope it works, right? Then
Yes.
with
Yes.
yeah, with the headless CMS, they'll be like, okay, you take full control of your UI. We're just going to give you an API. After you've put your data in the backend, we'll give you an API to do that. But that also only favors the developer that want to fully customize their UI. But if you want to still move quick, fast or quick, yes, another quick point. I like it. So
Yes.
if you want to move quickly, you then have to decide that what are you going to trade off? If you're going to do the CMS, what you're going to trade off customization. If you do the headless, you're going to have too much customization. You're going to need like a dedicated development team. But now you bridge it with the visual head CMS, which is it's still headless, but you give you all these visual components which are unique, just like you said, like Notion. One like folks don't even um comprehend the writing capacity of Notion, where you are previewing immediately, you are seeing everything the way it's going to be. It's just crazy and light years ahead of like almost all the other CMSs out there for content. So this is really all fun and good. So from what you're explaining, since you're headless, of course, and I think Builder currently support Next and Quick. So how is that story like? Like let's just draw the like the roadmaps. Like for a React developer that want to start out with Builder right now, what's going to be the story? Like, how is the learning curve? Of course, we're going to dive into the code, but just walk me through that story real quick.
Yeah, so the beautiful part is, we support almost every popular framework,
Oh
and
wow.
we built a whole compiler infrastructure to do that. Yeah, so we
Mm-hmm.
support Svelte and Vue and
Mm.
Solid.js, and I'm blanking, but a lot of the other things that are
Yeah.
popular we support with first class SDKs and everything. That's because we
Wow.
make a thing called mitosis that lets us write components in the whole SDK
Yeah.
once and generate it out for all the different code bases. So I could talk about
Mm.
that separately.
Yeah.
But for a React or quick developer, the beautiful part is you don't actually have to think about Builder at all at the time you're building. So you should just go build your site however you'd want to do it. The only thing you'd probably want to keep in mind is for some parts of your website, you're going to want them to be controlled fully in your code base. So
Yeah.
very common pattern is maybe people have like, let's take an e-commerce site because a lot of websites follow the same structure if you're an e-commerce. You have a homepage that usually you want your marketing team to own. Just put whatever you want on there. I don't care. But
Yeah.
you're going to have two more complex pages. You're going to have your product list page, so the grid of products, so you can explore and filter and search.
Mm.
That's usually almost entirely in your code base. You may use a CMS to customize pieces, but you're not going to build the whole page in a visual headless CMS. There's always a place for developers and advanced functionality, and that's one of those places. And then your product detail page, that's where here's all the different variations of the product and the add to cart and the buy now pay later integration, all the complexity. It doesn't need to be in the visual headless CMS. That should just be in your code base.
Mm-hmm.
Now at a certain point though, you'll decide like, okay, like we said, that homepage would be great to have in the visual headless CMS. Let's just let the marketing team put anything they want in there, and they can use our components as part of that in that editor. And maybe parts of other pages, like a lot of people will have the heavy product details at the top, and then they'll have recommended products and maybe more detailed. This product is made with organic cotton, and the organic cotton came from Peru, and like here's the beautiful
Mm-hmm.
shots and the videos of the farm that it came from. And people want to experiment, and you don't want all that stuff hard coded because you might try an experiment for a day, it
Yeah.
didn't work well. Try a new experiment. Let's get it out of the code base anyway. And so with Builder, again, you have your Next.js site, you deploy wherever you want to Vercel, and you just start picking the areas you want to be controlled, much like a headless CMS. The main difference is instead of having to say like, okay, I'm going to spend an hour trying to come up with the perfect schema, implementing that schema, connecting that schema to my code base, and wiring up all the components to the API that has that schema. You don't worry about any of that. You actually just say, let's take the homepage example. You take all the code that was between your header and your footer. If in Next.js, it's just going to be like, app/page.tsx if you're using app router, and you're just going to delete it all. And then you're going to add one API call to Builder. You're just going to say await builder.get. And if you use a page model in Builder, there's a few different model types. You just apply the URL. You're just like, hey, give me the contents of the homepage. And then you take that data, which is JSON data, and you have our React package installed. And all you do is pass that data to our React components as a prop, and then it knows how to render things dynamically, including from built-in components we provide, which you can customize or even remove, and also components you register. So you can define, and I'll show it in a minute, here's the components I have that people can use. Here's the prop types that they have. And so people now can drop it in. If it takes a string prop, they get a, text fields, they see it updated in real time, and that's it. And you're done. And now whatever is in Builder, people can rearrange, rethink the homepage every day. And just every time they publish, it's live on your site as fast as your site updates from an API call. If it's statically generated, it's next build. Webhooks can handle that. If you're more, people are moving back towards server-side rendering lately, I quite like that. So if it's server-side rendered, it'll basically be live instantly.
Yeah, that sounds like really, because I believe most front-end teams would already know how to make API calls, and with the way you describe it, it's just going to be like you making an API call with everything that Builder is going to provide. That's fun. So let's have you show me the code. Let's see how this really plays under the hood. You ready for that?
Totally. Yes, I'm ready for it. I'll pull up my terminal. We have my screen up.
All right, we do have your screen up.
Cool. Okay, so why don't we start? We'll start totally from scratch. I'm going to do npx create next app, and I'll go ahead and choose all the defaults. So this should be pretty familiar. Call it my app. I definitely want TypeScript. I have love-hate relationship with ESLint, so I kind of like that that's off by default. Tailwind, yes, I am a Tailwind lover. I know not everybody is.
I love Tailwind too.
I am going to use I'll use App Router. This works with or without, of course. And there we go. I have to say also, Panda CSS is pretty dang awesome as well. If you love Tailwind, but you're don't love that it's not as kind of TypeScript friendly, Panda is amazing. Only downside I've seen with Panda so far is you don't get ShadCN, which we'll use. ShadCN UI is quite nice.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so here, let's go into my app. Okay, cool. This should be the code base I just created. And let's do npm run dev. Oops, sorry, npm use. What do I need? Maybe I need 16. Okay, of course, knows it's about. Oh, I'm sorry, I know what's going on. Let's try this one more time.
Yeah.
Challenges of getting the most basic thing ever running. Okay, cool. So now we're just running plain old Next.js. And there we go. So we have a Next.js site. Nothing crazy or shocking there. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to just do a basic builder integration. What's really cool is we have a command line for this now. So you can now just go into your app and run npm init builder.io at latest. And this will walk you through the setup and skip having to read the docs, understand the nuances of the integration. I'm just going to say, yes, install the dependencies and update my next config. What's really cool is, besides obviously doing the npm install, and besides generating a couple files like the API call and the, I'll walk you through the code that's generated, like for rendering, but also what it's going to do is it's going to install a dev server. So a dev server plugin, sorry. So this is kind of cool. One thing it did here in my next config file is, I don't know why can't I drag this? I suddenly don't know how to use VS Code apparently, but let's just do this. What it did is it actually added this sort of plugin, which is a plugin for Next.js that will hook into the dev server. So what's cool about it is we can do some really neat things here. So I'm going to run my dev server and go to the website, and what we'll see is you saw the Next.js site flash really quickly, and then this overlay came here. This overlay is going to walk you through the setup. So I'll just hit the big button to get started. This will bring you to the Builder app and allow you to authorize. I'll use this new space that I have. And
what's a space?
There we go. Yes, a space in Builder is, think of it a little bit like, that's a good question. Try to think of the best analogy. So you can create, when you first sign up for Builder, you get an organization and you get a space. And within your organization, you can have many spaces. So a lot of people will make a space for, some people only have one space, and you can have environments within the space. A large company might have different spaces for different websites. So this company called Tech Stack owns Fabletics and Just Fab and Fab Kids and Savage Fenty, like all these brands. Each brand has a different team. So they have all these different spaces. Think of them as like individual content silos. They have their own keys, they have their own content, their own
Okay.
users, roles, permissions. Yeah.
Nice.
Kind of like, GitHub organizations versus GitHub repos. You can have tons of repos. You may only need one, you might need a bunch, etc.
Okay. Cool.
And then this last step, there we go. I can actually refresh past it. And that's it. So what that did is it connected to Builder. It allowed us to authorize, and it saved our API key. So now we're actually over in this sort of like little demo page. And I'll show you the code. But what's cool about this is a couple things. This is content that came from the Builder Visual Headless CMS. So none of this content was created in the repo itself, except for this counter. So we're going to use this counter. I'll show you in a second. Anything you want, you can just open in Builder. So whatever page you're browsing on your site, if your dev server's on, or you can just use our Chrome extension too. And we can just pop in here. There we go. So now we can go in and edit this visually, and we can change whatever we want. So this is the exact page that was just rendered. I can go in and change this to whatever. Wahoo. What's cool is this counter is a component from our code base. So I'll show you that source code. We'll make some edits. But you can see sort of I can make changes. You'll see how mobile updates in real time as well. And anything I want, I can hit publish and it'll go live. The only thing to know though is Next.js 13 has extremely aggressive caching. So you have to like restart your server and go through pains before it makes a new API call, but whatever. What's cool is we have all these built-in components that made this. You can edit much like Figma. They should look familiar, and you can choose who has the correct roles and permissions to be able to edit styling. Like maybe I have, maybe I want this color blue to match, so I'll make that blue. I'll make this larger, all that good stuff. Maybe I think the text looks better centered. But you can also choose within your company, your team, who can edit styling. Some people are only allowed to edit images or text or whatever. And what's really neat here is any component you register will show up over here. So we have this counter component, our integration just adds. I'll show you a couple things integration adds. So one is we have this counter. Maybe I'll want to make some edits. So we can view this side by side. So here we go. I'll go over here and change this to say plus and minus. And it updates in real time. And we can keep sort of tweaking this. We even can take props. So maybe I can say like, let's say minus button text. That's going to be an optional string. And I'll say props dot, oops. We're doing a spread minus button text. I'll make this a little bit bigger so we can see better. Minus button dot text or minus, maybe or make this plus. And then we also have this registry file, and I'll show you how we can automate what I'm doing right now. I'm doing this manually right now so we can see it, but our integration actually automated this and can do more. And then what did I call this? Minus button text. So say, okay, we're going to take a new field called minus button text. The type is a string. This type can be all kinds of stuff. In fact, let's do one other cool thing. Let's do color, type color. And this is where I define this component's registered to use in the Builder Visual Editor. And these are the inputs that I allow. So they're the prop names and types that people are allowed to input visually. And then let's utilize this color. Let's go. Color will be a string here. We want to use color. And we'll say if we provide a color, we'll go like background color. I think otherwise it's undefined, and I think this will behave nicely. Okay, cool. So now it actually immediately updated. I can change the minus button text to say plus or whatever. It all kind of updates in real time. And then I can change my color to whatever I want. And I kind of, as you can see, get this fully connected experience. I've got components. I can choose what's editable. I can drag and drop and put this anywhere else that I want. And if you don't like responsive editing, you're like, oh, responsive editing is hard. This is a preview of something we're launching really soon. But we also have this cool thing called our canvas mode. In fact, maybe I'll try it. This is early, so forgive me if it doesn't work as expected. But I can try converting this to, let's see, maybe I want to do all this stuff inside. Maybe I'll just do this. And so what's kind of cool is in canvas mode, I can just freely drag and drop things. So I can say, okay, actually, I think a more vertical layout is kind of nice. Maybe I'll do this and this and this. and then we can make it responsive again. And what's cool is we basically made it kind of absolute, like editing a Figma. And then we have an AI system that can convert it back to being responsive. So if it's confusing, I just want to move this over here, and responsive editing is like, whoa, what's confusing? It's a lot easier to just switch back, do the cool kind of canvas mode, move this wherever you want. Maybe you want it on the left now, and I want this on the right because, this is much more natural for people. And then go back, make responsive, and ta-da, it all is kind of mobile friendly again. Now, the thing I want to show though is, let's say we want to add kind of some more components, and I'm making this ugly. Let's make this page prettier really quickly too. So the next thing you're probably going to want to do is add your own components. In fact, I'm going to wipe this out, and let's make a brand new page of some kind. Note that we could also do it through this interface. So this is sort of the root content interface. You can see the page we've been making. I think this is a space I already have, so I already have a home page. But we can go in and make another page, like let's call it About. And I'll show you, do we kill our dev server? Oh, I actually have this set up. Sorry, I'm using a space where I've kind of jacked up the settings on. Let me reset one setting, which is that I think we're on localhost 3000.
Yeah.
The integration I showed you actually automates setting that port, but
Okay.
there we go. So what's cool about this is I can make pages on any URL I want. Now you can customize what that logic is, but let me show you how that works, and I'll show you the really cool thing I want to show. So let's go over to our routes here, and I'll show you that we generated this. So we generated a dot page directory with a page.tsx. This basically will be our catch-all. This will match any route that is not already hard-coded in our code base. So that means with this integration that the CLI automates for you, you will then be able to just generate new pages. You can have your team's like, oh, I want a new Black Friday page. Like, cool, just do it yourself. Hit new page, choose the URL's Black Friday, publish it.
Yes.
And what we do here, is we install your API key for you automatically, and you can have it managed through whatever key management system you use. Here's how the basic page function works. So if you're familiar with Next.js 13 routing, with the app directory, you just export your async function. We're going to make our API call here. So we're just going to query builder for the page model. You can create any of your own models for your own name schemas. That could be visually editable or just pure structured data. In this case, for pages, we like to provide the URL path. And that's just, this is an ugly way. Next.js is not as easy as I wish it was to just say the URL is /about or whatever, but this is the way. And then you could also get fancy here and supply queries. You can say things like, locale is whatever your locale is, and query and manipulate content by locale. You can filter down. So if this was looking up blog articles, you might look for the article slug matches the slug from the URL or some other way you're querying. So normal headless CMS stuff. This is all ultimately data in a database you could query however you want. But ultimately, we're passing it to this render builder content component that dynamically renders. And we also import over here. This is actually one we generate for you. This is using our builder component from the SDK. A little tiny bit of logic for allowing sort of previewing versus not. But again, this is all generated for you, and it's documented pretty thoroughly. And importantly, like you saw, we import this registry of components, which you're often going to want to add to. So that's the big thing I want to show is I'm making a new page, but maybe I want to have some other really cool components in here. What I'll do is let's add some shadcn components. So let's do this. Let's use their CLI. If you haven't used it, it's really cool. So for anybody not familiar with shadcn, if you use Tailwind, they give you all these really cool components for quickly being able to produce really beautiful sites and forms and stuff like that. And what I really like that I only learned about recently is they have the CLI. The whole idea here, again, if anybody's new to this is not a component library you npm install. These are literally like components made up with Tailwind that you copy paste into your code base, or in this case, I'm going to use a CLI. And then you can customize it to your heart's content, a little bit like Tailwind UI as well. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to rip through the defaults here, and then I'm going to generate some components. Perfect. And then I think the next step I want to do is shadcn UI init. I think I want, sorry, I don't want add. So let's add some components. I think I will not do all of it. Let's do like alerts, button, calendar sounds fun. Anything else sound really, really exciting? I don't know, progress, and a table. That sounds fun. enter. And this does take a second. Interestingly, it does these things sequentially as opposed to concurrently. Maybe that's to avoid thrashing your disk in your network. Okay, cool. So I just took my Next.js project and I added a few other components so I don't have to write it for myself. This is pretty cool. They have sometimes they install dependencies, but ultimately it's all just a bunch of Tailwind classes you can customize. And what I want to do is I want to make these things able to be used in our drag and drop editor. And now the interesting thing about ShadCN is it gives you primitives and then it gives you sort of copy and pasteable, slightly higher level components that mix in the more primitive, lower level components. So I think I installed alerts. So let's start by saying, okay, it would have given me these alert components, and then it's also going to give me this nice alert demo example. So let's do that. Let's go over here. I'm going to go back to my code, and in the components directory, I'm going to call it like myalert.tsx, paste. Oh, they like to use Lucid icons. Let's add that really quickly. npm install Lucid React. Cool. And now I have this alert component. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is register it. And you might have a bunch of other components in your code base. But what's cool is I don't actually have to learn or do anything kind of fancy or crazy. Our dev tool not only gave me the integration and the dev server that gives me these overlays, but it also gives this cool little panel that lets you go in and add a new page, tweak settings for this. And what's really cool is it allows me to list all the components in my code base. So this went through and combs through my code. It analyzes the code, the structure, and the types and shows me here are all the different components that I have. Now, I think, what did I call it? I called it my something. Oops. Sorry, I'm breaking stuff. Components. What in the world did I call it? Oh, it's called alert demo. Alert demo. Okay. So I want alert demo. And all I have to do is hit, yes, I want this. And then let's see, maybe I broke something. Let's go over here, build a registry. My alert from my alert. What is wrong there? Sorry, 1 second. Let's see what I have broken. There we go. There we go. Okay, cool. So let's pop back over here. And what's cool, I could have showed this side by side, which would be really neat. But what we can do is we can just grab and drop that in. So basically, as soon as we added it, I can show you adding some more components. You can just be dropping and amalgamating them. But what's more fun, as you've kind of seen before, is let's go in and I will move this over a little bit. And to my alert component, I'm going to give some props like title string, description string. Copilot can autocomplete that for me nicely. We'll make this props.title. We'll make this props.description. You'll see when I save that, those will disappear because my component's updating. And importantly, I don't have those inputs registered. And I showed you before, you can totally pop back in here and manually know what the syntax is. But the really cool thing is, if we go back to our components, we go back to this registered alert demo, it'll find that we have these two inputs, and we can enable them. We know the type. If you didn't see, this is reading and writing from our live code base. So I can tweak all kinds of things in here. Like I can change the type here. Title could become a rich text field, or it could become long text or whatever. And you'll see the code kind of update on the right accordingly. I also want to make the description field editable here in the editor. So cool, we updated the code. Maybe this should be a long text. It's just a multi-line text editor as opposed to single. And I think we make it required by default, and we can probably change if it's required or not. And anyway, let's go back over here. And now you should see we have these inputs. And so I'll add the description, hello world, yada, yada. Now the title, hello there, how's it going? And there we go. It was complaining we had a missing required input, but now it's there. And yeah, we basically have this sort of connected system where we can add infinite components. I think maybe I'll add one more just to round it off. I think I pulled in a calendar. That stuff's kind of fun. Pull calendar. Let's grab the code for this. I'll make myself a little calendar component. I'll make myself a new component, calendar.tsx. Maybe I'll keep my builder kind of browser over here the whole time. Cool. So we can export our calendar demo. Should all work. I'm going to go back and go to my builder dev tool over here. Kind of want to see these things side by side. Calendar, I think I need to close and reopen to refresh. Oops, that usually means that I killed my dev server on accident. One sec.
Yes.
One thing about Next.js 13 app router, takes a little bit longer to get started. Cool.
Mm.
And then, cool, there's my calendar demo. So if you watch over here, this is kind of neat. You'll see as I register calendar demo, it'll should pop in this. Oops, actually, this is a different dev server instance. I need to refresh that. And I also, forgive me, we actually just updated this like 5 minutes ago, and I think we introduced a bug, which is we're using the wrong name here, but that
Okay.
is fixed. There we go.
Yeah.
Now we have our site, we have our calendar demo component, drop it in. And these are contrived demos. You get the idea. It's a little bit more fun when you actually start using or creating templates. So if you want to make something that looks more like a real kind of web page, and you actually want to go in and let's start adding our components. Actually, this is kind of a nice one. We've got this kitchen and dining example. We're like, hey, let's replace this image with, or let's drop this calendar. I don't know, maybe right here, make a new column. And there we go. We've got this cool example here, this cool page. We've added a calendar widget that's fully interactive inside. We can do a preview of it over here. We can see that, okay, cool. It's a full-on interactive calendar component. We can also remove this setting to hide the overlay. So yeah, it looks normal. And there you go. You're essentially building. And remember, it's just your website. So if you go back to the homepage, it's still your homepage. If you have a header and footer around your pages, you'll see the same header and footer inside of the pages you build in Builder. And that's generally what you see people do. Like if I go to a couple brief examples, we have this cool Chrome extension that shows, it'll highlight, let's see, as I maybe use a better example. Oops. Well, this is actually a good example. So Everlane site, you can see that it's just code.
Mm-hmm.
But right here, this is a builder editable region. Using our Chrome extension, you can see that. You can pop in and edit it. We can go to another website like, what's one I'm allowed to show publicly? I forget. Here's one that I like. Zapier's a cool one.
Oh.
Zapier here. Yeah. We can see this is an editable area. I actually tweaked these overlays. The overlays are a little bit harder to see now. But anyway, you always have like your header, your footer, all that stuff. And you just have these areas in between. Like in this case, it's this whole homepage, and go in and edit. And that's basically what we did. Why don't I pause there? I don't want to talk over you and let you get any questions you like in. Hopefully that made some degree of sense.
Yeah, it made a lot of sense, and this is really fun stuff. I really like the attention to detail in the DX because I see you change stuff in the code and also in Builder. You get to see like I don't even want to know how you all are doing that because it just makes it really great. Because the instant feedback is something that is good for DX, and I see that you have that, and plus your Chrome extension, your drag and drop things. You have to register components, and you get to like see it instantly. This is amazing. Like this is literally Figma on steroid, but for developers that are building stuff. It's fun stuff, really.
That's cool. I appreciate that. And yeah, that's the idea. I mean, it's crazy that it's 2023 and design and development tools are so different. You can't develop visually and you can't design with code. And like that's kind of the area we're trying to fill that chasm. And we're seeing it, done really, really effectively and can work really, really well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think this is awesome. Yeah. So I did see the Figma to HTML features that you have, and
Yes.
yeah, do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, so we have a Figma plugin. Let me show you this. I'm actually using a development mode, so
Okay.
I can give you a little bit of a preview of something we're working on. So what we have right now is we have a Figma plugin that can take anything that you have that uses auto layout. So as it might be kind of well understood these days, if you have a design in Figma, I mean, this is an absolutely positioned design. We have no idea how any of this is supposed to become responsive. For instance, we have all these overlapping nodes. Like the question, of course, is how do you import this into another tool? So Builder today, if you go in and you use auto layout in Figma, which is basically where you create all kinds of nested groups, and you define if one group is kind of like a flex row or a flex column, then you can hit a button and import that into Builder. Anything you import to Builder can be converted to code. In fact, I can just pull up our kind of get code button. And then you can see, you can grab any of this as static code if you want, or you can grab it as dynamic code, which again, that's our API integration. So if you're tired of copying and pasting, the API is really the best way to go. Um, but a lot of people just want to turn their designs into code. Or there's also another element that people like to turn HTML into designs. And so our Figma HTML plugin does both of those things. You can actually take a website and say, hey, import this into Figma. It'll load it up in Puppeteer. It'll look at the position and styling of all the different HTML elements. It'll remove any sort of invisible elements that don't need to be part of the design. It takes a while to run because we are having to spit up Chrome and do a bunch of stuff. So that's one thing we do here. We do have a cool generate design with AI feature. I'll show you this really briefly. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
This is using LLMs. In this case, I just have this homepage hero prompt and say, hey, I want it to look like everlane.com. And oops, I'm in dev mode. So this actually might not, I'm working on this locally. So this feature may not run because it's probably connecting to APIs that are not available. Oh, no, it is. There we go. You're seeing me do two things at once. Thing one is generate this stuff, and my computer's freezing too because it's doing two things at once. I'll explain this momentarily.
Yeah.
There we go. There we go. So sorry, the import I started ran over here. So I actually just imported into Figma Builder's live homepage. Oops, my computer's freezing again because I think in dev mode we do some heavy processing.
Yeah.
Okay, come on. There we go. Okay, so I don't know why.
Yeah.
Sorry, my computer is freaking out a little bit. I might have to do a force quit and reopen.
Mm-hmm.
This is the pains of developing on some pretty complex stuff. Okay,
Yeah.
so let me show you the couple things that we have here. So thing one is this that we just imported. So this is kind of neat. This was basically, I provided the website. We got a couple things wrong. Like for some reason, we got this image height kind of wrong. But generally speaking, we pulled in a website to editable Figma layers. That's one piece of the plugin. The other piece was that conversion generate designs with AI, which is kind of cool. And for some reason, my plugin was freezing up and not letting me do that. But the other piece we're working on that I think is most interesting is being able to take designs you have, which is what I was starting to show. Designs that are imperfect, they're not groups, they don't have perfect layers, they're not set up or named nicely. It's just a random design. And what we want to be able to do is just select, this and turn it into a fully responsive layout. And so I'm in dev mode, so this will open up in my local host. But what we're working on is a custom AI model that will be able to take any raw design, bring it into Builder, and convert it to be 100% responsive. And so as you can see, we have the same design, but it's responsive. Now, it'll take some cleanup, like on this lower screen, we probably don't want this. Maybe we want the button though. And you'll see on larger screens, actually I'll use CSS to hide that instead. Let's go over here. Let's say visibility, hide on tablet and mobile. There we go. So in this case, we made fully responsive stuff off of a design where we did no editing, nothing fancy. And then we can grab the code for it here too. And this will give me fully responsive HTML, CSS. And so we even use AI for the conversion, giving it nice class names and everything. And you'll notice that this does not use any hard-coded widths and heights. This is all flexbox, margins, all that stuff, just like you would have written. And we can get fancy and do all kinds of other quick frameworks, quick, Vue, Svelte, et cetera, et cetera. We can do it with Tailwind here as well. And yeah, we basically converted this to pretty nice Flexbox Tailwind code, all from a raw kind of Figma design. And we're working on improving the AI model. We have a pretty interesting kind of launch release planned around this and a whole bunch of other features. And long-winded answer, but that's that whole Figma integration thing that we do.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really like the bridging the gap between design and development. And because like there's this thing I've heard which is um focus on what won't change. And I don't think
Hmm.
any team will be like, I want to be able to take the longest time to get from design to development. So that's never going
Yes.
to happen. But I would like the faster, the more quick your team can move, the better. I did it again, right?
Yes, I always hear it. I have no idea if anybody else is going to hear that, but I do every single time, and it's a
Yeah,
big joke running internally. But
yeah.
yeah, no, I completely agree. You're a developer and you have a design and you have a React Tailwind code base, and you just need to go from design to code in the most efficient way possible.
Yep.
Or you have a website, your Zapier.com or whatever, and you have a marketing team wanting to add pages to it, whether you're the marketer or the developer. If you can just go straight from Figma or from the visual interface we have direct to live on the website, and again, it's your Next.js React performance design system, interactive components, whatever. It is a massive, massive time saver, and it feels crazy to me to see people do things any other way. You kind of almost feel insane when you're like see people still writing the stuff line by line by hand every time. There's good reasons sometimes. Like one thing we don't have support for natively in our Figma import AI that we're working on, but we're working on adding, is like understanding that like, well, you may be using a design system, you may have specific color variables for some of these colors, you don't want these sort of hard coded value. You may be using a component library. This button should not necessarily be a raw HTML button with background color, whatever this background color is. This is I don't even know. This should be, the button from our design system, and it should say, capital B button color equals primary. So
Mm.
there are some legitimate reasons why the AI generation will still be a bit different than if you've written things by hand. It can still get you in even the worst cases, like 90 something percent of the way there, and just make a couple tweaks and you're live. But we really do envision a world where we can get to a place where literally exactly what a developer would written, almost character by character. Let's say as good as like something like GitHub Copilot would do, or better in some cases, can just be done for you. And similar to Copilot, you can say, "Oh, this is mostly there. I'm going to tweak two things. It's kind of nice. I didn't have to write it all by hand." Or you just complete it and it's there. And again, even better, if you don't want this in your code base, if you don't need to be involved in the process, and your teams can just publish and be done, that's even better in the majority of cases, honestly, especially if it's like a marketing use case.
Nice. So I'm gonna just ask one question. We are almost at time, and so how is the SEO story? Because I know marketers they are in love with that stuff. So we're using Builder. How does that play out?
Totally. No, so Builder's fantastic for SEO. So I think for SEO, SEO is actually quite important for our business too. You really always kind of need three things. Thing one is you really need essentially like high quality markup. So that means it needs to be, it needs to load fast. It needs to be good, well structured HTML that loads quickly and doesn't bring a bunch of baggage. It's, you need to not use things like iframes or canvases or ugly stuff, and just have high quality, as semantic as possible HTML. Within that, you also need to have it be accessible as possible as well, right? Images have alt text.
Yeah.
You use the correct HTML tags, right? You use certain ARIA attributes, all of that. And luckily, Builder automates all of that. So everything is up to spec on all these standards. And the beautiful thing is you can customize everything. If you don't like how our text block works, awesome. You can register your own. You can register a supplementary text block that replaces the built-in one, and you completely control how it renders, because all of these blocks we have, the image block, the whatever that's built in, they're 100% open source. You can go in and see the source code, change it. You want it to render a different way? Awesome. You own it. It's yours. Anything that is your site, it's your site. Um, and second, all the other sort of like built-in stuff can be augmented and complemented. So you could say like, hey, instead of using rich text for titles, we're going to make our own title components, right? Like for instance, one thing we have, you go to like builder/docs, all of our docs use Builder. In here, this is all made in Builder. Like you can see the little overlays, and we have this search component inside it, search for components and stuff. Does all the cool things, da da da. We have components for our, like, you can make a special component for titles. We automatically generate this stuff. Again, it's all WYSIWYG generated, but it's very seamless how we use components and everything else. So anyway, yes, SEO, you need high quality markup, customization with components. We have all that. Second one is you also need things like meta tags. So a beautiful thing about Builder is under the hood, it is all just structured data. So any page or section or anything visual you create, you still can have whatever structured data fields you want. So just like a headless CMS, you can define that there's additional required fields for every page. A page needs a description, they need an OG image, all that. And then you have, that becomes this form interface, and you supply all those fields. And then when you render, it's actually extremely simple. If we go back to that page.tsx example, when I fetch this content we can also be rendering any kinds of like meta tags. So I'm going to pretend we're in old school Next.js land, which I actually really liked the ergonomics of the head component that they're phasing out. But here you can literally just take the data. Basically, the content data property is all those meta fields. So here, render whatever you want. Meta name equals
Mm.
OG title, et cetera, et cetera. And so you have full control over the structured data and structure of how it renders, as well as the generated kind of visual content. And so, however you would handle the short story, really is however you'd handle SEO in any other platform, any other CMS, you would do it the same way here. Without really any difference besides a much more seamless visual editor, which brings me to the third thing that matters for SEO. And we have a ton of case study data on this is iteration matters a lot, right? If you're an SEO team, but you got to build and you have very severely restrictive editing abilities, then it can take a long time to spin up new pages. If you're another team and you can literally click, 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 drag, drop, spin up, pages a new page every single day, getting to several and dozens per month, you're going to see a much larger SEO impact with the ability to create, measure, and test much faster while still maintaining that bar on performance, accessibility, all other structured data criteria that you have. And yeah, I would say this is one of the best things you could probably do for SEO is at least adopt an approach like this whenever you could find. So there's not really other products like Builder. It's a bit unique in these ways we covered, but the mindset you can at least try to adopt if you're not using this product because it really is impactful.
Mm. Yeah, that's amazing, really. The marketers are gonna love Builder. I think they already do, right? So yeah, we so one question, what sort of, because we've actually spoken about marketing pages, I can see Builder being used for like an e-commerce product list. Um in the wild, what sort of websites have you seen being built by with Builder?
Yes, great question. Here, let me open up our homepage. It'll give you a sense of an example. So a lot of it is some type of marketing website, right? So if you look at some of the logos here, a lot of them are e-commerce, right? It's like Vistaprint, Aloe Yoga, Nuts.com, Everlane. They're selling products online. They're constantly building and testing new things. Builder's an obvious perfect fit. So you'll see others that are not e-commerce. There's like Afterpay or Experian, or I'm trying to think of what else we have here. Media on the homepage, but there's a bunch of others like Vimeo. And on those, um, again, you have people who usually are building out. They have a marketing team that needs to influence the website on a pretty regular and rapid cadence. So, you go to like Vimeo's homepage, or you go to, like we showed Zapier's homepage. It's what I actually should have mentioned just now. And they got to iterate on that. In fact, Zapier gets a lot of their revenue from SEO. SEO matters a lot, and so being able to produce pages quickly matters. Where you'd see it probably less is like, SaaS app dashboards, right? um, Heavy duty, like let's say for instance, I'll show you something inside of Builder. This is a pretty heavy duty SaaS application, kind of like Figma, does a bunch of stuff. But interestingly, we use a mix of code and Builder. So actually here, it's almost like a game. Like I almost want to play a game where it's like, guess where on this page we use Builder. The answer I can show you is this. So this is part of a new space when you're getting started, when we want to show you different docs and resources, which we can A/B test and personalize based on if you said you're a developer versus you said you're a marketer or a designer. We can go to some other pages, and right here we actually use Builder. So you'll see that unlike for the Zapier example or whatever, where it's not the main contents of the page, the main contents is this really complicated set of search and filters and access controls. Within it, though, you'll find areas controlled by a builder when really don't want to have to deploy this application just to fix a typo on a link, in this section, or to run a test on if people should be looking at more demo projects or more docs when they're first trying the product, stuff like that.
Mhm. Yeah, that's amazing. Seeing Zapier in there, I just like, wow, that's really really cool. Yeah, that's yeah, this is awesome. I again kudos to the team. And one thing I really like about how you're builder is you are sort of like also enabling like all the bits you think are useful to the broader open source community, just pull it out and just give us like mitosis, party town, quick, and who knows what else you all are gonna open source pretty soon. Yes.
We're trying not to do any more. We have so many things we have to support now. It's crazy. Obviously, the company's growing, so it kind of gets easier as you grow. Um, but yeah, no, we're excited about those things. At the end of the day, we want to be able to build fast, rich, dynamic sites and applications quickly and easily. And we actually told ourselves not to build so many projects, but at the end of the
Yes.
day, they all work very, very cohesively together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really nice to show, yeah, it's really nice to show what's possible with this type of technology across the board.
Yeah. Cool. So just out of like me just being curious. So I do know that mitosis helps with all the framework agnostic things. So Vue, Next, whatever. Where does Quick fit in this builder thing? Or you're just feeling pretty generous? I just give us Quick.
It's a great question. So yeah, you got it right. For the builder platform to work and support all these frameworks, we had to build mitosis, which I'll just briefly show for anybody who's unfamiliar and
Oh yeah.
you're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Um, Mitosis is basically the idea is write components once and run everywhere. So I could show actually this little fiddle that I'm the original creator of the project, but Sammy on our team is now the
No.
person who's been writing and building the thing and knows how it all works better than me at this point. But anyway, what's cool in here, and you'll actually see Builder down here as a little demo example, is I can write out my component, whatever I want, see it update in real time. And we can see what is a JSX component compile to Vue here. And Vue with different options. Vue 2 versus Vue 3 can look a little different, or TypeScript versus JavaScript can be a little bit different.
Yeah.
This is a fun one to show, switching between the composition API
Oh.
and the options API. Yeah. And same thing works. React is not surprising, but what's cool here is we can switch between use state versus MobX state management versus React solid state. We can show styling with style JSX versus styled components versus emotion CSS. And we actually support Tailwind too, so I should throw that in there. We can show the same component in Quick and Angular. And again, it's all going to update in real time. So I can change this to like Wahoo. And we'll see that update or add another input or again, whatever you want, it's all there. Svelte, and we do a lot of cool stuff to also make sure like, hey, this is actually a really cool one that I love. I added this. Somebody made a GitHub issue for this and I was like, that doesn't seem possible. But then I realized now it is. A really cool one we do is, so let's say you just write something like this. In Svelte, you can say value equals and on change equals. But if you're literally just saying value equals some piece of state and on change equals update that piece of state,
Yeah.
we can automatically collapse that into bind value. That's the simpler syntax. And it's cool to see these hooks transform into the really simple Svelte format too. We even have React Native on here, which is cool. Oh goodness, we have so many. This is crazy. I added most of these actually. We're forgetting. Yeah, Lit is even in here. Alpine JS. I think that was contributed by the community. Just raw HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So anyway,
Wow.
yeah, so we needed this. We needed to get to the point we are now, where I'll show you on our docs really briefly. People want to use Builder first class with all of these different frameworks, right? In order to support all these different frameworks, we need that infrastructure, and we open sourced it for a variety of reasons. But do good for the world is a good default
Yeah.
too. Uh, so the big question then is, well, why Quick in Party Town? Well, one thing we noticed way back in the day is we had this Builder website. And let's go over here and let's go to Google PageSpeed Insights. And when people see a visual editor like this, or like you saw, and they see drag and drop and it all becomes code, they get them generate such an optimized and fantastic way compared to anything you've seen before. And so we would show that off. Now, the thing is, in e-commerce in particular, people are obsessed with these PageSpeed Insight scores. For good reason, they are important. And so they would go and they would Google Builder. But I'll show you, our website now uses Quick, but before we use Next.js, and I'll show you, they would just go and see, well, how does Builder perform, like our own website perform? And they would use that as a kind of proxy for how well
Yeah.
what the Builder tool kind of generates performs. And what we found was, and it'll take a minute to run the lab results. Yeah, we were in the red. most of the websites are in the red, right? What I did was I started messing with like, hey, we have this project called mitosis, so we can take anything in Builder, and I don't know if you saw, actually, I probably should have showed it better, but when we're in this mitosis fiddle, what's really cool is I can actually make updates also here inside of Builder, and it can, oops, I'm messing up. They can also update here in mitosis. Oops, this is a bug. We need to get that out of there, but you get the idea. What's cool is we visually edit this AST. So anything in Builder can become anything in mitosis, which could become native code for any framework. So going back over here, it's like, okay, we have this page. It's a straightforward page. And let's output it to every framework and let's do a bake off. Let's see if Solid.js or Vue or Svelte or whatever, let's see what is the fastest. And so I was taking it and I was pumping out, Next websites and Svelte websites and whatever, the same page. And I was at best getting like a 55. And like, let's not kid ourselves. You look at most large scale production websites and a 46 is actually a pretty good score, but it was really starting to bother us. And what I started doing is I was trying to hack and slash my way through finding out like, why are all these frameworks not performing that well? Like, a 50, 55 is as high as I'm getting on anything. And what I did is I couldn't figure it out. I was like changing up how images are optimized and all these things. And eventually I kind of was losing my mind and I just did a hack to make it so that no script tags went to the client. So we only delivered pure HTML. There was no downloading, executing, hydrating, anything with JavaScript. And suddenly the score here like shot up to 100 out of nowhere. And I was like, whoa, like I had tried so many other things. I tried like doing the same thing with CSS, like deleting CSS or like deleting images. And it turned out it was the JavaScript, which when you really dig into the numbers and how these scores are calculated, it makes perfect sense to download all this JavaScript, to execute it all, and then to do this pretty expensive hydration that frameworks traditionally do. There's a big problem. I started messing with these new kind of custom outputs from mitosis where I was like, here it is, where basically the idea was output plain HTML and little bits of inline JavaScript to handle the bare minimum what's needed. It's a similar philosophy as Svelte, but I saw that even Svelte has a lot of frameworky stuff, and I was still hydrating, and I wanted to not hydrate. I wanted to just be plain HTML, and when you click something, we just find the DOM node and update it. Marco's probably the closest thing to that, actually. The way they compile out is pretty incredible. So they do a really good job at essentially generating what I want to do. In fact, maybe I should have used Marco in retrospect. What I ended up doing though is I found Mishko. Mishko basically was like, hey, I'm working on this thing. He called it cute at the time. And he was like, it's a way to compile down these JSX components into pure HTML. No JavaScript needs to load or execute until it's absolutely needed. And the vast majority of it never downloads or executes ever. And we hooked it up, and I'll show you this. And again, I tried every framework. I was willing to use any framework. I didn't care. We just had a problem, which is we just had to show that Builder can be really, really fast. If it's as fast as whatever technology you're using, and it cannot be faster because it's within your tech. It's not replacing your tech, and that's important.
Yeah.
Anyway, finally with Quick, we got it up. I don't know why we're at 89. We're usually like 90, 95. So we'll look into that and debug that. Maybe we did something silly. But Quick was the only one that got us way up into the green. And that's where we're like, okay, we really need to do this. This is a big problem for e-commerce and marketing sites. Our customers need one framework we can recommend that with or without Builder will generate really, really high performing pages at any level of complexity. And as you'd imagine, the Zapiers, the Fabletics of worlds, they have very high complexity that they have to deal with. And that's where we're like, okay, we need to build this. And so we started building it. We're very excited about it. And then we ran into one last issue, and that actually might be the issue we're running into now. Maybe not. So the last issue you run into is you can make your code perfect and your JavaScript not load when the initial page loads. But if you're a decent sized business, you're gonna have no choice but to use a decent amount of third party scripts, and those are just gonna hose you. They're gonna take your performance way down and hog that main thread. And then we made Party Town, and then with Quick and Party Town, you can have a perfectly fast site, 100 out of 100 or whatever at any scale, etc. And with Builder layered into that, Builder does not affect your score at all. So now you're not just building in code perfectly fast sites at any scale without even thinking about it. Now you can do it visually too, perfectly fast, any scale, and not even think about it. And that's where we are today. And now we're like, okay, we have We have plenty of things. We have no more we're trying to make. We just want to do a really, really, really good job at these things we have now.
Mm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So at a certain point, the way the frameworks worked with hydration and everything was sort of like a bottleneck for shipping out really fast performant websites. So quick was the answer. And of course, I've seen a ton of how quick work. I've gone through it with Mishko, with Manu. It's awesome. So yeah, this is great. It's actually good to see how all these things piece together because at the end of the day, you just want your customers, your users to be able to have performant websites while still having the tech. But if not, they could just have quick, let it be. Let it make their website quick. I like it.
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the idea. And just keep moving fast as ever.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we are at time. Thank you so much. This was an amazing session on build. I've always wanted to I've seen all the ecosystem. I've written articles about it. I've spoken about it, but I haven't really seen Builder itself. But Builder is tremendously amazing. It's like I said, Figma on steroid for developers. I just bridging that gap between design and development. I really really love it. So thank you so much for taking out the time. So people interested in Builder and maybe they want to ask you questions. So how can they reach you or the community?
Totally. You can check out our website at builder.io. And I'm on Twitter and like everything else, TikTok, YouTube. I don't know what else. Steve8708 is my handle everywhere. It's a weird one, and that's why it's always available. So that consistency is nice. And I post a lot on LinkedIn too, because surprisingly, LinkedIn has a great like social networking feature set that people are using more and more. It feels like you can find a lot of great stuff there. But yeah, that's the main ways. We also have a Discord. If you go to probably easiest is to go to quick.builder.io, find the Discord icon, and we've got a Discord there that talks about our platform, our open source projects, all that stuff. You can join the conversations there, ask questions, and talk to me and others.
Awesome. I've always been curious what the 8708 mean. Sounds like a double seven.
I never thought about that. It's just my phone number. It's the last four digits of my phone number. So if you can figure out the other, however many digits, you can call me. I won't really answer probably, but you can do
That's
it.
that's an impossible puzzle. So if you want to try that, good luck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Steve. This has been awesome. Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This was really fun.